Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shobowale. We begin in Afghanistan, where the first international commercial plane has departed from Kabul airport since Western countries finished evacuations from Afghanistan 10 days ago. In a press conference held at the airport, Qatari Special Envoy Mutlaq al-Qahtani described Kabul International Airport as operational, saying it was a historic day for Afghanistan. The Qatar Airways charter flight is now en route to the Qatari capital, Doha, with a second flight due on Friday. Well, this is all thanks to negotiations brokered by U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken during a recent visit to Doha. Some 200 people, including Americans, have flown out of the country. The VOA's White House Bureau Chief, Patsy Widakuswara, joins us now for more on this. Patsy, it's good to see you. Do we know how many Americans are on board and how many are left in Kabul awaiting flights out?
No, we do not, Taniola. And in fact, all of the information that you have just mentioned to your viewers about the flight coming out of Kabul, heading towards Doha, that's all information that's coming out of the Qatari envoy and also the Taliban spokesperson who spoke to reporters a couple of hours ago on the tarmac. The White House and the State Department has not given us much detail about this this flight that's coming out. The last time I spoke with them was about an hour ago, and they still haven't really given any more details about this flight. One thing that I do have to mention, other than the fact that we don't know how many Americans and other Westerners that are on that flight, other than what has been said by the Qatari envoy, that there are some Americans and some Westerners. We don't know how many the numbers are. Other than that, my sources are sources who are right now still trying to get Americans as well as Afghan allies out of Mazar-e-Sharif. This is a city airport north of Afghanistan. They are still stranded. There's at least one charter flight consisting of about 705 people, including 9 Americans, 9 permanent resident holders, and about 170 SIV applicants. These are the special immigrant visa applicants, Afghans who have helped the U.S. and supported the U.S. within their 20-year operation in Afghanistan. They still have not been able to leave on their charter flight. And yesterday, Secretary Anthony Blinken blamed the Taliban for not allowing these flights to leave. But also White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki mentioned something about the fact that the U.S. has not been able to verify the passenger documentations against these manifests. So certainly there's a lot of confusion about, around the questions of just exactly how many Americans as well as how many Afghan allies are still in Afghanistan right now.
Okay, Patsy, let's speak about resettlement now. We know that thousands of Afghans are now in the United States. How is the Biden administration's resettlement plan coming along, bearing in mind that many more Afghans are still in countries temporarily on the request of the United States?
Well, so far we haven't heard of a resettlement plan. We know that there are many Afghans who are still being processed in several U.S. military bases around the country, as well as in third countries, what the Biden administration is calling the lily pad countries. These are, people being scooped out of Afghanistan in the 2-week evacuation process out of the Kabul airport and then placed in these third countries, including in Qatar for more processing and more vetting. So right now we still don't know. We still don't know the number. We still don't know how many are SIVs, how many of these people are actually Afghan nationals. There's still a lot of unknowns about these process. But certainly President Joe Biden is under a lot of pressure to give some sort of certainty about these Afghan refugees. He has certainly said that he is committed and to welcoming these Afghans to the United States. But as far as concrete plans regarding the exact number and how and the timeline and so forth, that is still unknown.
All right, speaking of those lily pad countries, is the United States government paying these countries to provide asylum for the Afghan refugees?
Well, I asked this question to White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki several days ago, about the structure of the agreement with these lily pad third countries, what kind of payment or any kind of, and what are we doing in return for their help in evacuations? And she said that there is no quid pro quo. It's not a single format. It really depends on the cases and depends on the countries as well. So again, this is another angle, another element that journalists have to dig up to get answers from the administration in regards to the evacuation and its impact.
Oh, okay, Patsy, just before I let you go, ahead of the 9/11 remembrance, President Joe Biden has requested that files on the attacks be declassified after victims' families told him not to attend any event if he doesn't. Where are we on that?
So far, the declassified report has not been released. The executive order that President Biden gave was about 5 days ago, so we may have some time before the report actually comes out. And you're absolutely correct. There are some family members of 9/11 families, victims, who say that they refuse, or they say that President Joe Biden should not be attending any of the ceremonies, which is coming up in just a couple of days. But it seems like the White House is going ahead with plans for President Joe Biden to visit three or all of the sites, which is in the Pentagon, as well as in New York City and in Pennsylvania on September 11th. Now, of course, this was initially planned to be a sort of a remembrance that at the 20th anniversary of 9/11, President Joe Biden will be able to present to the American people that he ended the forever war, the 20-year-long war, America's longest war in Afghanistan. But as you know, he is also under a lot of pressure and criticism as to how he ended the war, the messy and chaotic withdrawal out of Afghanistan, as well as the evacuation process, which is still currently ongoing.
All right, then, Patsy, we appreciate the update. Thanks for joining us. In the meantime, China has hailed the new government by the Taliban as a necessary step towards restoring domestic order and pursuing post-war reconstruction. The comment was made by the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin in Beijing. Wang says the Taliban's announcement of the formation of an interim government and the arrangement of some key roles has put an end to the 3-week anarchy in the country. He reiterated that China, as a responsible major country, and Afghanistan's neighbor, as a clear and consistent stance on the issue. But he said China hopes that the new administration would broadly solicit the opinions of all ethnic groups and factions, echoing the expectations of the Afghan people and aspirations of the international community. Well, back inside Afghanistan, journalists say that they have been beaten, detained and flogged by the Taliban when attempting to cover protests. Photos circulating online show 2 journalists from Etilatro's newspaper with welts and bruises after their arrest in the capital, Kabul. One of them, Taki Dayabi, says he had been taken to a district police station where he was kicked and beaten. A few hours later, he says he was released by the Taliban without explanation. Earlier this week, the Taliban, which seized control of Afghanistan in a sweeping offensive more than 3 weeks ago, announced the formation of an all-male interim government to rule the country. Since then, they've effectively banned protests, declaring them illegal unless permission is sought by the Ministry of Justice. Away from Afghanistan, a judge trying suspects in a major jihadist attack in Paris that killed 130 people briefly suspended the hearing earlier today after the main defendant tried it for a second consecutive day to make political points from the dock. The judge granted the 31-year-old suspect, Salah Abdulsalam, the right to speak in a discussion about which victims' representatives would be allowed to participate in the trial. Abdulsalam asked whether the victims of wars in Syria and Iraq would also be invited to testify, and alleged that he and his fellow defendants were being treated as if they had already been found guilty. The judge repeatedly admonished him that he was straying off the topic of the hearing and eventually cut off his microphone. Abdul Salam continued to talk after that, and the judge ordered a suspension of the hearing. It resumed about 25 minutes later. The 31-year-old is believed to be the only surviving member of the Islamist militant group that carried out the attacks on 6 restaurants and bars, the Bataclan Concert Hall and Sports Stadium in Paris on November the 13th, 2015. Over in the UK, boats carrying migrants across the English Channel could be turned back from the UK if personally approved by Home Secretary Priti Patel. The government has authorised border force officials to use the new tactic, but only in limited circumstances. However, France is strongly against the plan, saying it breaks maritime law. It also accuses the UK of blackmail. But Prime Minister Boris Johnson's spokesman says any plans would be safe and legal and would comply with the law. Rising numbers of migrants have been crossing the English Channel in recent months, and so far this week, more than 1,500 people have crossed by boat. Immigration lawyer Dayo Fadino joins us now from the UK for more on this. Mr. Fadino, thank you so much for your time on the programme.
Good evening, Attorney. Thanks for having me.
So what do you make of this new move by the UK? Does it comply with the law?
No, it does not. And the situation right now to do with the Dover channels and migrants actually crossing the channel, the fact that the government, the British government, is even thinking of actually turning these boats back, beggars believe, really. But if that policy is actually put in place, it will be quite draconian, you know, and very brutal policy. First of all, it doesn't actually satisfy the rules of law. We have, you know, the International Maritime Law states very clearly that anybody on the sea who is quite vulnerable and not being able to, you know, get to where he or she is going, there is that obligation to rescue such people. So the fact that the government is thinking of actually, you know, returning such migrants, very vulnerable migrants, back to their point of the beginning of their journey is totally, utterly wrong. The law is very, very clear about that. And there's also this breach of the ECHR, the Human Rights Rules and Regulations, which clearly states that any human being has that right to life. You have the right to at least be able to exist. And returning such migrants back to their point of where they started the journey, in a situation where they could be at risk, they could drown, you are actually taking away that right of life. You're also actually taking away a situation where you know, that person could suffer very serious and inhuman treatment. Again, under the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights Law, you are not meant to actually put that person at risk, punishment, or torture. So indeed, it's, I mean, you got a series of rules and regulations and laws that the British government will be breaking if they should actually introduce this very particular policy.
Yeah, Mr. Dayo, just very quickly, the Channel is one of the most dangerous and busiest shipping lanes in the world. Has the movement of migrants on the Channel disrupted trade in any way?
Yes, it could, honestly, because we have vulnerable people in dangers trying to actually get to the UK. And because of the fact that this very particular channel is such a very, very busy and dangerous sea, you know, where there's so much trade going on. Indeed, they could collide with such dangers. So indeed, it could affect trade somewhat. But notwithstanding, I don't believe the correct approach and the solution to such you know, danger and for the vulnerable, you know, migrants trying to cross the channel. I don't believe the best solution is now to return them back to where they're coming from. That's quite draconian and not right at all. What they should do, or what I believe the government should try to do, and I think Amnesty International, the Refugee Council in this country, they've actually stated it very clearly. They should at least find a way of having patrols to rescue these people. We should understand that these people are coming from a country or countries where if indeed they had a better way of applying for asylum, they would have done that. But honestly, that's not possible. So I believe there should be some kind of, humane and a responsible approach from government to at least be able to safeguard the interests and the lives of these migrants.
All right, then, immigration lawyer, Mr. Dayo Fadino, thank you so much for your thoughts on the program.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Cornwall, has been announced as the first patron of the Mirabel Centre, a sexual assault referral centre based inside the Lagos University Teaching Hospital Ikeja here in Nigeria, conveying the good wishes of Her Royal Majesty during a visit to the centre in the company of the management of LASUTH. The British Deputy High Commissioner to Nigeria, Ambassador Ben Llewellyn Jones, said the Duchess was proud to shine the spotlight on the centre's work towards providing free medical and psychological support for victims of rape, sexual assault and gender-based violence, which aligns with Britain's efforts towards achieving SDG goals on gender equality.
We want to say thank you very much. We are in
We're here to celebrate the significance of Royal Highness the Duchess of Cornwall being a patron to the Mirabel Centre, and really that shows her commitment to tackling these incredibly difficult issues of sexual violence and sexual assault in Nigeria, and her understanding of that came in part from the royal visit in 2018, and we really hope, and she really hopes, the patronage can help elevate the profile of the Mirabel Centre, get still more people to come forward with financial support, get still more victims to come forward, because there are so many people out there who need help, and really help the Mirabel Centre reach still more people and raise the profile of these issues and help prevent some of these issues from occurring in the first place.
Well, founder of the centre, who was clearly appreciative of the Duchess's interest in the centre's work, said despite successes, challenges of victimisation and stigmatisation persist after rehabilitation.
Support services are not available for survivors of rape and sexual violence. We do what we can here at the Mirabel Centre, but when we make referrals or they go back to the larger society, the stigmatization continues. There's a low level of prosecution. The victimization in the community also continues, because at times the alleged perpetrator is a celebrity, is a rich person or is a known person, and if the survivor is not of the same economic class, it becomes a serious problem, because others will victimize and say, okay, why don't you take this 100,000 naira, why don't you take this 2,000 naira? So that pressure, societal pressure to withdraw cases and not follow up, that's another kind of challenge that we face with our survivors.
Now to some politics. Northern Ireland's largest pro-British party has threatened to withdraw from the region's power-sharing government unless big changes are made within weeks to the terms of Britain's divorce deal with the EU. Democratic Unionist Party leader Geoffrey Donaldson demanded the removal of most of the new trade barriers between the British province and the rest of the United Kingdom that were introduced under the terms of the Brexit deal.
Within weeks, it will become clear if there is a basis for the Assembly and Executive to continue in this current mandate. And I want that to happen. But equally, we will also need to consider whether there is a need for an Assembly election to refresh our mandate if action is not taken to address and resolve the issues related to the protocol and its impact, its damaging impact on Northern Ireland each and every day. I believe the resolution of these issues is no longer a question of time. Therefore, regardless of what the position is of the UK government or that of the EU, in the future, DUP ministers will seek to block any additional checks at the ports in Northern Ireland that arise from the Northern Ireland Protocol.
Now, at least 14 people have died after a fire broke out at a makeshift hospital in the North Macedonian town of Tetovo. Witnesses say the fire, which started on Wednesday night, spread quickly, and in about 20 to 30 minutes, everything was on fire. The prosecutor's office said DNA analysis would be needed to identify some of the victims, all of them patients in a serious condition. No medical staff were among the victims. The health minister says 26 patients were accommodated in the COVID-19 hospital at the time of the fire, and the remaining 12 are being treated for serious injuries in hospital. And now to one of those rare sights out of North Korea, a nighttime military parade commemorating the 73rd anniversary of its foundation. Only this time, military personnel marched in orange hazmat suits. The only thing missing were the ballistic missiles. Images were released by state broadcaster KRT. In it, we see North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, in attendance as paramilitary and public security forces of the Worker Peasant Red Guards, the country's largest civilian defense forces, began marching in Pyongyang's Kim Il-sung Square at midnight on Wednesday. It was the first time since 2013 that North Korea staged a parade, with the 5.7 million strong Worker Peasant Red Guards launched as reserve forces after the exit of Chinese forces who fought for the North in the 1950 to 1953 Korean War. KRT also aired footage of Kim Jong-un holding a banquet on Wednesday for North Korean labor innovators and merited persons who have contributed to the country before attending the military parade. We end the program in South Africa, where the first black free dive coach is turning the tide on decades of apartheid history in which water sports were reserved for wealthy white people. 33-year-old Zandile Ndlovu takes youths from Cape Town's Langa Township for lessons as part of an initiative under her Black Mermaid Foundation. Take a look.
Trying snorkeling while on holiday in Bali in 2016, Ndlovu fell in love with the ocean. She swiftly got her scuba driver's certificate the following year. Last year, she received an instructor's certificate in free diving with no equipment. Today, she's South Africa's first black diving coach, turning the tide on decades of apartheid history in which water sports were reserved for wealthy whites.
In becoming a freediving instructor, I knew for the first time ever that this passion needed expansion. And the water space has not always been diverse, and I wanted to create a space where diverse representation in the ocean space is possible.
Established in 2020, the foundation currently pays for the lessons, but is looking for funders to ensure its longevity. The 33-year-old gave up her own consultancy business, which she had run for 5 years after being employed in the corporate services sector previously. South Africa's first female free dive instructor, the children learn how to bite down onto the snorkel mouthpiece when breathing face down in the water, among other skills.
Sisani teach us to swim and to know everything in the sea. And we saw fish, shark.
My joy is the moment when one of the kids says, "Oh look, it's a fish," or "Oh look, it's a starfish," because it means that they have transcended the fear space to actually look beneath the surface. Pulling it.
Wayne Florence, a marine invertebrate creator, says Ndlovu's work is very important in helping young children connect with the marine world.
Amazing stuff. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shaboali. Bye for now.